You are listening to MCC Votes and Seats, the podcast series of the Center for Political Science of Mathias Corvinus Collegium. We provide election insights with experts and politicians.
Today, we are going to talk about the snap parliamentary elections that were held in Moldova on the 11th of July 2021. Following the resignation of Ion Chicu, the position of Prime Minister became vacant and the parliament was obliged to form a new government within 3 months. Experts say these early elections took place in the context of a broader political cycle characterized by instability and political deadlock. Today, our guest analyst is Ms. Natalia Putină, who specializes in ethnic minorities, migration policies, electoral processes and electoral behavior, as well as democratization in the post-Soviet space. Ms. Putină is currently an associate professor in the Department of Political and Administrative Sciences at the State University of Moldova, Chisinau, and she is also the Vice Dean at the Faculty of International Relations, Political Science and Administrative Studies. Ms. Putină, thank you very much for accepting our invite to this podcast recording. So as to start, do you consider this snap election as the beginning of a new era in Moldovan parliamentary politics?
Thank you a lot for invitation, Balint. As widely expected, the elections have dramatically reshaped the balance of the power between the established political parties and the group in Moldova. And the result of the election of 11 July record for the first time in the political life of the country the victory of a single right-wing party with 63 seats out of 101, being very close to obtain a constitutional majority. Such a performance obtained only the Communist Party with 71 seats in 2001. This result showed that Party of Action and Solidarity, relatively young pro-European party that was created in 2017, has managed to attract and strengthen the right-wing electorate and mobilize the diaspora for the first time. The narrative of the election campaign being largely focused on serious domestic issue of the country. That Party of Action and Solidarity has tried to steer away from the enduring domestic political conflict, instead focusing parliamentary campaign on fighting poverty and corruption, as well as renewing Moldova's expression to seek closer ties with European Union. That parliamentary election in Moldova could potentially lead to the end of the years-long domestic political crisis that has had a profound impact on the country's political and governmental stability. As well as responding to electoral demands, supporting its anti-corruption efforts, anti-corruption reform can be implemented without resistance from parliament or the executive because the majority. This will also mean that dialogue with the EU and other Western partners will increase. The incoming government is likely to prioritize securing international political and financing support from the West and to strengthen its relation with the European Union. That while the one-party government could mean the potential end of political uncertainty in the long term.
Besides putting an end to the long electoral crisis you mentioned, experts claim that Moldova's early parliamentary elections were well managed amidst an improved legal framework and voters were offered a wide choice of alternatives. The election was calm and transparent, as observers say, and the process was positive. However, international observers from the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe identified concerns over the impartiality of the election authorities. Inadequate campaign finance rules left potential breaches unaddressed in Moldova. Do you agree with the OSCE statement that the actual legal framework in Moldova forms a sound basis for democratic elections to take place?
Yes, I agree. And for the most part, the July 11th election was conducted in compliance with the electoral normative framework with some certain minor violation. And that opinion also is supported by the national and international observers. At the same time, it's important to mention about those new changes in the electoral framework made since 2019 in compliance with some of recommendation of the Venice Commission and other international body. In that parliamentary election was changed the electoral system from a mixed system to a fully proportional one. Also was revised the lowering of threshold for parties and blocks to 5% and 7%. That for the 2019 election, the threshold were 6% and 8% respectively. Also, some amendments was made relating to the gender quota for candidate list that was strengthening the representativeness of the gender by introducing a placement requirement that at least 4 out of every 10 candidates of the list must be of the same gender. And also was introduced the minimum turnout requirement of the set of registered voters that was cancelled in 2019 election. And some significant amendments was included to financial aspect of electoral campaign.
Apart from the significant amendments to the electoral system, there were doubts over the impartiality of the Central Election Commission. Do you think that trust in the Central Election Commission was undermined by decisions that appear to be lacking in neutrality, including the number of polling stations set up abroad, as well as for Transnistrian voters, as the media portrayed the situation there?
Yeah, some problem exists on the impartiality of the Central Electoral Commission regarding to establishing polling station abroad and for voters residing on the left bank of the Dnistro. You know that sometimes the decision was changed. Some protest was organized by the parties and civil society in that sense. That also some recommendation of the Intelligence and Security Service, Ministry of International Affairs and Office for Integration Policies regarding to the Transnistrian region and the polling station open there was ignored. According to some organization, for example, Promlex, that is an organization specialized in monitoring election in Republic of Moldova, they recommended only 28 allocated polling station in Transnistria, but on July 11th was opened 44 polling station for voters in the Transnistrian region, 2 more than in the November 2020 presidential election. The problem was regarding the Korzova and Bender section, that our territory are not effectively controlled by the constitutional authorities.
All in all, with all the legal concerns that were raised, the aforementioned amendments are important cornerstones in the Europeanization of the Republic of Moldova. Let's go for the election results. The Liberal and Pro-EU Party of Action and Solidarity, PAS, received 52.8% of the vote and won 63 seats, obtaining a majority in the 101-seat parliament, as you mentioned before. The Social Democratic Alliance, electoral bloc of communists and socialists, BECS, received 27.2% of the vote and won 32 seats, while the National Conservative, Protectionist and Pro-Russia SHOR party received 5.7% of the votes and won 6 seats. In Transnistrian territories, the post-communist BECS maintained its popularity, securing more than 62% of the vote. In contrast, in the capital region of Chisinau, PAS gained nearly 57% of the vote. The Post-Communist Alliance won most of the votes in Moldova's second largest city, Bălți, securing around 40%. Actual Prime Minister Natalia Putină, delegated by PAS, is the third woman to hold such office in the country. She previously served as Finance Minister in the cabinet of Sandu. So, what are the major reforms that most Moldovans are asking for?
Moldova has many problems, and the most painful for its citizens is the low standard of living, which has contributed to a massive migration of about 30% of the population in the last 30 years. That the multiple corruption scandals that if of the billion have highlighted another major systemic problem which greatly affect the social and the economic dimension. The massive vote for a party that had declared itself a fierce anti-corruption fighter showed that citizens are aware of problem and see it as the main reason for poverty in the country. The large mobilization of voting in diaspora also showed the expectations are related to major change in the country, both from the perspective of democratization of state institutions and economically, and also relaunch of the European agenda of the Republic of Moldova. That the task of new government is very difficult one because the expectation of citizens, diaspora, civil society, business environment, and national partners are very high, and the actions must be urgent in the context of very unfavorable. We are talking about the effect of the pandemic still ongoing and budget austerity. In addition to an anti-corruption reform that is very promoted, we need a country's public administration reform and the reform of the judicial system. And the immediate priorities of the new government are likely to include courting international financing and investment to support the post-pandemic economic recovery.
Looking at the regions, the various regions of the country, what could be the reason for the decisive popularity of the post-communist socialist BECS alliance in Gagauzia and Transnistria and the northernmost regions of the country?
In the Gagauzia and the Transnistria region, left-wing parties, which are also pro-Russian, have always had the undisputed support of voters. It's about a Russian-speaking electorate, mostly composed of a representative of ethnic minorities in the Republic of Moldova. Given that we have no ethnic parties, left-wing parties are trying to declare themselves multi-ethnic, promoting the right of ethnic minorities. And also other aspect is the lack of linguistic integration of ethnic minorities in our country. Most of them are speaking Russian and being under the informational area of Russia and maintaining this Russian affinity inherited since the time of the URSS. And also local leaders on the side, as well as the Russian authorities, support a lot the left parties in the national electoral campaigns.
I just checked the election map on the internet, and I saw that two pro-EU and anti-corruption parties fell out of the parliament. What could be the reason for the dropout of these pro-EU parties?
Unfortunately, Dignity and Truth platform failed in this election and more because its former leader Andrei Năstase lost also the local election in Chișinău to the socialist Ivan Ciban. And also in the 2020 presidential election, he also had a modest score. In the previous election, the Dignity and Truth platform ran as a bloc with the Party of Action and Solidarity, obtaining together 26 seats. But now it's difficult to say which party is more responsible for that good result. But the fact that over time a rift has been created between these two political partners, and a Dignity and Truth platform former leader Andrei Năstase has often made reckless statements to his partners, including Maia Sandu. And that, I think, has taken him to the reserve bench. We don't know how his departure from the party leadership after the failure of that election will be able to increase the party popularity, but I hope the party will have the chance to enter in the next election in parliament.
Looking at the tendencies, do you see any chance that the far-right conservative and nationalist Romanian AUR party will be able to gain floor in Moldova in the future? This time, only 0.49% of the votes went to them. And here, let me ask a very sensitive and provocative question. How popular is the idea of the union between Romania and Moldova?
It's a very interesting phenomena, our party, and mostly in Romania, because that party obtained a surprising result in the parliamentary election in Romania, being massively supported also by the voters from the Republic of Moldova. But if analyze the profile of this party in relation to the political context of our country, however, the situation is a little bit different. That its position itself as a pro-union party with certain extreme deviation. But we also have several pro-union parties that are campaigning in the political arena of the Republic of Moldova, and most of them are very weak in terms of the performance, leadership, and potential to attract votes. Even though the number of the pro-union citizens varies between in different polling, between 80 and 25%. Many of them have already disappointed with the pro-union parties, for they voted before. And at this moment, on this ideological dimension, there are not yet strong enough parties and leaders.
Talking about nationalist voices, during the election campaign, actual Prime Minister Natalia Putină appeared in a Russian language video promoting the concept of Moldovan people. Part of the press claimed that this message was a Moldovanist one. How divisive can this message be in the Moldovan society?
Over time in Moldova exist different cleavages, including that cleavages refer to the name of official language, Romanian or Moldovan, or between the pro-statism versus unionist parties. I am happy that the most important parties in that electoral campaign, even communist and socialist bloc, try to not put that narrative in the center of political debates. For me and for other experts in electoral process, the station of the shore party is a big paradox because comparing with the result of Democratic Party of Moldova that fell out of the parliament in that election, shore party maintain their electoral support, and obtain 5% of the votes. Because also Vlad Plahotniuc and Ilan Shor was compromised and links to the corruption and billion fight in Moldova. I hope that for the next election, the popularity of that party that use a lot of social programs to decrease the influence in Moldova.
I understand. And talking about narratives and popular campaign themes, the deeply polarized environment did not prevent substantial campaign themes from being discussed this time in Moldova, including the economy, the fight against corruption, social and welfare issues, and judicial reform, as you already addressed it. The media played an important role during the campaign period. Numerous television debates allowed all parties to communicate their policies as well as provided information to voters. Do you agree with the observers' claim that the bias of major media outlets due to their party affiliation weakened, in a certain sense, media safeguards on political pluralism?
Yes, unfortunately, the media in the Republic of Moldova, with some exception, behave biasly and reflected and balanced the electoral contestant of that electoral campaign. And the monitoring of the audiovisual media service showed the disproportionate presentation of the electoral contestants, especially between the electoral bloc of communist and socialist and other contestants. That bloc of communist and socialist was the most visible electoral competitor, being massively promoted by important TV station in Moldova. And the problem is that the regulatory authority, Audiovisual Council in our country, has not exercised its supervisory and control duties with almost diligence and good faith, and has not taken prompt decision to ensure the correct and equidistant coverage of candidates all audiovisual media service provided. That lack of promptness and efficiency of that institution did not contribute to ensuring a free and fair election, and we hope that some reform in that sense will be made by the new government.
By the way, is it true that the Moldovan society is deeply polarized? And if so, what are the main fault lines?
Yes, along the time as I speak in the Republic of Moldova exists some cleavages, and that offer to different political parties to use that narrative and polarize the society. The most important and predominant in the all electoral campaign of the Republic of Moldova are the geopolitical orientation of the country, that pro-Est and supporters. Other important cleavage, as I mentioned, is the name of official language of the Republic of Moldova, that Romanian or Moldovan. The cleavage related to the future of our state, to maintain the status quo and be an independent state, or to union to Romania. And also maybe not a very predominant. Cleavages belong to the church, manifested at the level of the followers of the church belonging to the Metropolitan Church of Moldova and Bessarabia. And the political party in Republic of Moldova are positioning themselves on the left and right, exploiting these cleavages to raise awareness among voters and attract them more easily to the camp of its support. Unfortunately, very often the narrative of electoral campaigns, as they speculate of that topics and the party in this way mask their political failures or the lack of clear political programs. Unfortunately, in the recent election campaign, this issue were not dominant in the political agenda, and the main political parties focused on systemic, social, and economical issue, perhaps with the exception of a bloc of communist and socialist and unionist parties.
Talking about economic and social issues, how did the pandemic affect the campaign?
Speaking from the technical preparation perspective, that were managed effectively this election. All the legal deadlines and recommendation are respected. National Extraordinary Commission for Public Health adopted some COVID-19 prevention measure for the electoral period. And Central Electoral Commission distributed the necessary equipment and materials to all the responsible bodies. Fortunately, the election coincided with the regression period of COVID-19 cases. After election, there was no increase in the disease rate, that the citizens were responsible and followed the epidemiological recommendation in the electoral process. On the other hand, parties had to rethink the electoral technologies, greatly increasing the influence of digital media and social media, although traditional electoral meeting also took place. And in addition, both the authorities, political parties, and the citizens have already had the experience of ongoing and participating in election in a pandemic context during the 2020 November presidential election.
Thank you very much. Is there any information or any thoughts you would like to share with our audience?
I hope that the political agenda of a new government will be put in practice.
Yeah, let's hope that the country will continue its way towards Europeanization. It was truly a pleasure to talk to you about the July 2021 parliamentary elections in the Republic of Moldova. Natalia, I wish you all success in your duties and future endeavors at the State University of Moldova. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.